Long story short, in hindsight, Caruana crushed Alexenko in round 2 of the 2020 FIDE Candidates. It was an exciting game. We have some interesting quotes from Fabiano from the official post-game press conference. And without any further ado, let's dive in to see how we got here. We had a Nimzo Indian from Fabiano. Of course, not his first time having played d4, even as someone who plays e4 most of the time. But it was his first time playing the variation for f3. For those who don't play the Nimzo Indian as black, I'm guilty of that. You may not know exactly why this is unique, but the point is, white is going out of the way to say, I'm going to get a huge center, I'm going big, and I'm going to send you home, and you may give up the bishop pair and not get any kind of compensation for it. Obviously, the risk of a move like f3 is you take away the natural developing square for the knight, which could cause some dysfunction to your later intentions of getting castle on the king side. But it's worth it if you can get a ton of space, and who knows what you might be able to do once you advance and you have 3 huge pawns. Maybe you advance even further and really strangle black's pieces. I'm obviously doing a bit of foreshadowing in terms of what we know was an amazing game by Fabiano Caruana. But also to emphasize that while Alexenko did play the line with d5, this is the nice move, the principled thing to try to slow down the center. After the move a3, he decided to play the slower variation of keeping the bishop pair. Doesn't want to give it up anymore on c3 if he's not going to get any attacking ideas against the double c-pawns. I get it. But the more forcing, more well-known variations where you take and then immediately try to blow open the center. Let's say from a principle point of view, we're trying to take advantage of the fact that white has played this move f3 and is going to be keeping the king in the center longer than normal. These are the lines that I really like for black. They're a little more forcing. Clearly, I don't know as much about these openings or anything when it comes to chess, comparing myself to Kirill Alexenko. But those are variations. If you're playing a Nimzo, you might want to look into as a little more direct. After the move bishop to e7, Fabiano gets the big center. We've been talking about the whole purpose of f3. And after captures on e4, some natural moves are played. But once white immediately gets d5, you already can see variations in the future where if black doesn't have a concrete plan or hasn't prepared well against this line, you're going to be following in love, with a great d-pawn and the protected passer that it may become. So, after e takes d5 and castles, bishop e2, rook e8, knight f3, I was curious to see whether Alexenko would prove to know this variation better than Fabiano Caruana. But after the move, knight b to d7 is played by black. We see that it's Fabiano who unleashes the first novelty here. If you haven't seen the game, you can pause the video and ask yourself how you would play such a nice advanced center position with a very, very powerful passed d-pawn. Obviously, you want to sit and develop solidly, let that long-term strength of a protected passed pawn be something that helps you down the road, right? No reason to rush it. Apparently, if you pause the video, you already know I'm wrong, and it's why I was so impressed by Fabiano's move d6, and why, regardless of what he said about having never played this line before, if I'm Team Carlsen thinking that Caruana might be my challenger again, I'm making note of his preparation here in this variation in the Nimzo, because I think he clearly knew what he was doing, and we're going to see for the rest of the game that he definitely did. So, what's the risk of d6? The reason I said we would develop solidly is, one, that's the way the position had been played before. For example, in a game from 2020, we had Lombars versus Chopin. That's Casper Chopin, for those who don't follow the puzzle-rushing friendly ghosts over on Chess.com. Casper Chopin was playing this position as black, and after the move bishop to f4, keeping the bishop pair after knight b5, was completely equal in a good position, and there was still a lot of chess ahead in that one. But Fabiano not interested in playing bishop g5, the natural developing move, and letting black go for the maneuver that Casper did, where the passed pawn is blockaded and black gets the dark squares. He says, I understand the risk of playing d6 is that I'm removing my pawn from the very defended and supported square on d5. This should be a positional no-no if you don't have concrete tactics to back it up. But that's exactly the point he did. After bishop f8, we play h3. Black doesn't want to give up the bishop pair and bring pressure to b7, obviously, so he backs up the bishop. But here comes knight to b5. Now, there's some criticism coming Alexenko's way here in a second as far as the critical moves that maybe he didn't find over the next 5 to 10 ply. But the truth is, I think this position was already very, very tough for black. From a practical point of view, he was clearly surprised by Fabiano, who had never played this f3 Nimzo. Then this really aggressive try of pushing d6 and then bringing the knight to b5 just puts you under tactical pressure. I mean, there's a threat here. Knight to c7 is a fork, and it may end up winning material. Combine that with the fact that there's no clear way to try to undermine the d6 pawn other than the plan that Alexenko tried to go for. I can understand why he did what he did. That's my point. And In hindsight, yes, the move rook to e6 was not as accurate. The variations I analyzed over at the blog, which of course you can go check out, link below, is the move rook to b8. One of the key points here is that, okay, you avoid the fork with the move rook to b8. So knight c7 no longer wins material. And after bishop f4, a6, knight c7, you can now play rook e4, which would be just like the position that was occurring in the game, as we're going to see, except black is up a tempo. He could play a number of moves here. He could prepare for Fabi's g4 with something as simple as putting the bishop on a safe square. He could also try to play b5, preparing to make some sacrifices but opening up more lines against the king. There's a number of ideas. The other idea that Fabiano Caruana mentioned himself, actually, in the post-game press conference was black also could have played the move queen to b6. One of the points here is you're actually sacrificing the exchange, but you're doing so with some compensation, right? You've already got the pawn. You picked it up because it wandered too far. You do have control over the dark squares. And I think that Fabiano's idea also makes a lot of sense. So these things, under a little bit of less pressure, probably would have been found and maybe chosen by Aleksenko as better. But he played the move rook e6 as a bit of a panic move, I guess. You're immediately preventing knight c7. That's the forest through the trees here. Knight to c7 would allow rook takes d6 with tempo on the queen. You remove the defender of the knight. You're winning material. So that's why Aleksenko played rook e6. But after the move bishop f4 with d6 defended, where's the beef is the question. What's your next move to bring pressure to d6? Because if you're not going to take d6 now, you can't stop knight c7 coming next. And that's pretty much what happened. a6, knight to c7, and then the move rook e4 is played with tempo. As I said, this is just like the variation I was showing earlier, where black could have played rook b8 instead of rook e6, except at the end of this line in the game, Aleksenko still hasn't dealt with the rook, so he has to move it to either b8 or c8, but regardless, we're going to see the very aggressive and direct approach that Caruana took. And again, I'm not part of Fabiano's team of seconds, despite rumors you may have heard. Just kidding, Fabi, I'm always available. You can give me a call. Is that you right now? Oh my god. Oh, look at that. Oh, hey dude. Yeah, Fabi, what's up, man? I was recording a video on your sweet win over Alex. Oh, no, you don't want me to even talk about being on your team ever again. Okay, in a video that people, yeah, no, it's cool, dude. No, we're cool. Yeah, so we'll talk later. Yeah, so not a big deal. We'll talk about it later. But the point is, whether this was deep prep and he's kind of being a little sheepish about it, or whether he just chose a good line and Aleksenko kind of hurt himself. We're going to see in the game reports that we have with the Chess.com stat generating tools we're using on our live show that Aleksenko clearly did not play a very accurate game. But still, I think it was hard to get through this critical moment after d6 was played, the novelty by Caruana. And I think this was just an amazing game by the American, showing why he's many people's favorites to maybe win this event yet again and challenge for the world title a second time. So, after bishop h2, Aleksenko moves the rook. There's some analysis of maybe rook b8 being a little better, but I don't think it's critical. I think after g4, a very forcing move, black is just in huge, huge trouble. The point is bishop to g6 allows bishop d3, and now the rook is actually trapped. You're going to lose it for like nothing, no compensation. So in the game, black didn't lose the exchange. As you already saw, I foreshadowed the critical position earlier. He lost a piece, right? But he did so now by taking on g4, taking twice with the threat of going into e3. But after the move bishop d3, you end up having to settle on h2. If instead of taking on h2, the move instead was knight to e3, the point is that in these positions, you can actually move the queen to any one of these squares and give up the rook, because this type of situation leads to even worse problems for black, where white has two pieces for the rook, a ton of pressure coming on the f-file, no real way to ever get rid of this very, very powerful pawn on d6, and you can check it with the engines. White is basically at +4 already. They're about to start announcing mates against black. So Aleksenko took on h2, and after bishop b4 takes f1, what we had was a very, very big trade. Queen takes f1, bishop takes d6 is really a nice idea at the end of the variation. That's kind of the whole reason black allowed the piece sacrifice to happen, because while white was distracted, taking care of all these threats, the knight took here, knight takes here, we get to win the d6 pawn and kick the knight out of this c7 square. The problem is, after the knight goes to d5, as Fabiano said after the game, he was kind of surprised himself by not just how strong the extra piece was, but how quickly he was able to use that as an anchor toward launching a kingside attack. I think that's one of the really great things about this game, is that it's not just that very well-prepared opening, maybe some foreshadowing to future approaches by Caruana, but also the fancy Fabi finish. As I said, we're going to TM that, because these pieces start to get nasty very, very quickly over here on the king side. And Aleksenko doesn't even have time to fantasize about an endgame where maybe he can convert 3 pawns versus a piece, right? He doesn't have time to deal with anything but stopping Fabiano's threats. And that party gets going after g6, queen h3, king to g7, king h1 threatening rook g1. Knight e5 played. At this point, you're black. You're down a piece, but you're the one trying to trade pieces to stop the attack that's coming. And Fabiano's not interested. Plays the move knight h4. After the move h5, we get rook g1. And now we see the position that I first foreshadowed when we had the video start out. Bishop to f8 was actually not the best move. It allowed the game to finish off more quickly. The last kind of final hope, I think, in terms of trying to defend might have been a move like knight g4, trying to block the g-file. But white actually has the really great idea, knight f5 check. And the point is, on a move like king f8, you're playing rook takes g4. Taking here allows mate. Taking here allows things like mate with queen takes h5 again. We'll just show the line for everyone to see it. You can't take the rook or the bishop because in the end of that, queen h8 is still mate. So just so many problems for black here. All these pieces just come to life, which is why you can understand why I was like, wait, what happened in this game after having left it for just a little bit this morning before the coffee kicked in. So black played bishop f8, but even moves like knight g4 were really not enough to slow it down too much. Knight f4 comes, threatening all kinds of nastiness on g6, as well as knight takes h5 because the pawn is pinned. After knight to g4, here comes the party. Knight takes h5, and then the very subtle move bishop f5. Knight f5 check, which is usually what you think you should do after you sacrifice a piece, is follow up with forcing moves, is also winning. But actually, bishop f5 is the most direct move. You're just going to take g4 and bring everybody in here, along with the fact that you're threatening the rook on c8. So bishop e7 was played, and after bishop takes g4 and trades, the king can't run anywhere as mate. King f8 is queen g8 mate. King h7 or h8, queen h5 is mate, and king f6 allows queen f5 checkmate. So bishop g5 was the only move, and now we don't even want the endgame where we're up a piece. We still want mate. Caruana plays the move queen h5, threatening rook takes g5, f6, and now knight f5 check, followed by queen h8, is enough for the mating net to finish the job on rook to d1. Rook to e1, excuse me. Finally, Aleksenko actually resigns. So, and actually, wait, I'm sorry. Queen h5 was actually the last move already. The variation with queen h5 that we have at the blog just shows what the likely finish would have been. Again, a variation like this shows the forcing mate. If you want to see it all the way to mate on the board because you're into that kind of thing, I'll show it to you. So, as we said, this was just an amazing game by Caruana from start to finish. The compassion you feel for Aleksenko in a game like this, being black against obviously some great preparation and then a ruthless execution of that prep. You feel bad for the FIDE wildcard. But as we take a look at the Chess.com game report, as we've been doing now at the end of these videos, we can see, as we said, Fabiano plays a fantastic game. Aleksenko plays statistically one of the worst games we've seen so far. It's early, it's only round 2, but it was just a very, very tough game for black. Lots of inaccuracies there, 7 total inaccuracies. And ultimately, if we're looking at that game arc, that's that little graph right below all the different move measurements, and we let's look at the game arc and actually come back over here to our full board. We'll just kind of say where did those things really occur. I think white first really started to grab the edge here after black played the move rook to e6. And that's where you can see that kind of arc start to shift. Rook to e6, allowing bishop f4, and then it gets worse once we realize that in this position with g4, white is just losing, black is just losing material. White is just converting very cleanly. So, again, at this point was pretty much just a one-game direction there. You see that game arc, it just got better and better for Caruana, even if there were some things to nitpick on. Overall, just an awesome game from Fabiano. Hope you enjoyed it. If you missed the earlier game, click on the video that's right in front of you right now. Check out my analysis of Maxime Vachier-Lagrav's victory over Ding Liren. And make sure you keep watching our live coverage over at Chess.com TV. We're bringing it to you every day, the 2020 FIDE Candidates. Hope you go nowhere else but Chess.com to watch it, and we'll see you around there.